and that's called the digital identity legislation. They actually called it the trusted digital identity legislation, just in case you don't trust the government. And so what that is a way for the government to streamline your private information and then on-sell it and allow private corporations to use it, and for the government to also use it for their own services. And this is information that you would not choose to share with these organizations, but they're going to do it on your behalf. Now, the digital identity legislation it sounds familiar to people who have been paying attention to the globe. And if you go through, and I wrote this down to make sure I quote it correctly, the Digital Identity Consultation Regulation Impact Statement, which is attached to the legislation, they actually quote the World Economic Forum's article, Shaping the Future of Digital Economy and New Value Creation. So our digital identity is built off the World Economic Forum's digital identity, which they say is essential for recovery after COVID. Now that matters because that links in to the other major global idea from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, which is a platform for digital identity, which is a globalization of citizenry private data, which is then used to reset and reshape the global economies to be more sustainable, to be more inclusive, and to be more collaborative, which is basically saying they're going to collectivize and socialize our global economies for the climate change initiative. And so this barcoding QR system is actually taking us toward the climate change restrictions on private citizens. And so linked into the global, the good identity, what's called the platform for good digital identity. These things were what terrible names. They lead to that the social contract. So now businesses and individuals can't just produce good products for the market and what the market wants. They have to reference what the unelected global bureaucracy thinks is a good idea, and they can only proceed with their business if it's approved by these global forums. And so it's essentially a social credit system, not just for individuals, but for corporations and society in general.
So let me ask you right up front, is Australia heading towards a surveillance state in your view?
We're not heading there. We're already there. I mean, you can't walk out the door and go to the shops right now without the government knowing who you've got in your house, what their status is, where you shopped, what you bought, and how long you're out for. So that is a surveillance state. What we are heading towards is a surveillance state that's linked into a global surveillance state for the purpose of changing the way our economy and our civilization thinks. That's what's truly scary. And while the World Economic Forum spent from 2017 to 2021 doing these global pandemic training for our leaders, they've now decided to change that up. And events like the Cyber Polygon event are training our global leaders how to reset our economies in the event of a digital disaster. So they're first going to get us addicted to the digital age, and they're going to pull the carpet from underneath us and reset our economies via some global digital event that they're now fantasizing about.
Alexandra, James and I call you both our favourite, our favourite non-Christian faith believer, which is irrelevant. But I have to ask this
is the correct word.
Yeah. But you are a believer. But let me just say this: my Bible talks to me about there coming a time when there will be a cashless society, where people can't buy, sell, trade, move without a certain mark or whatever it is. How important is it that how important is the preservation of cash to our freedom? According to what you've looked and studied and investigated, how important is it?
Even from hundreds of years ago, cash has always been the great liberator of the people. Because if you are free to buy and sell services without the interference of the government, well, then you are truly free. But once you require this cashless society where your right to purchase can be taken away at the click of a button by banks acting in collaboration with government policy, then you have no true freedom. So when the World Economic Forum talks about a digital apocalypse and wanting to install these layers of digital security to protect us, what they're actually doing is making our civilization especially vulnerable to any kind of digital calamity. Because if the global system suffers some kind of cyber hack, which they're predicting, or some kind of failure, then you can lose everything. And they can use that as an excuse to redistribute wealth, to change property deeds, anything they want. But if you have cash, that is yours. And the government
Correct.
cannot take it away from you via their policy. So you have to be
Yeah.
super careful when you see things like, oh, don't use cash because COVID's dangerous. And
Mm,
I mean, there's never been
mm,
any instance proven of a COVID infection via cash. It's ridiculous,
yeah.
but they're selling you as safety.